Beep, 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 beep. Beep. Hi everyone! Welcome to the live stream Q&A that follows the Bitcoin Basics workshop. I hope you enjoyed that presentation. That was from August of 2019, back in the old days where we all stood close to each other and didn't wear masks. It was a great presentation. I really enjoyed doing it at the BTC 2019 conference in Denver, Colorado. And it's probably the longest workshop presentation I've done, covering a lot of different topics, so we have great questions. So I'm going to quickly jump in the chat and make sure all of you can hear me and see me okay, and then we'll start taking questions, and let's see where this takes us. All right, it looks like you can all hear me okay. And so I'm going to start answering your questions from the previous chat. Let me just pull up the right window and let's get started. All right, first question comes from Dester CZE. Antonop, how do you feel being quarantined? Must be a big change. You used to travel quite a lot, didn't you? Yeah, I did. I honestly, I'm not enjoying this. I'm not enjoying it at all. I like traveling, and even when I'm not traveling, I like feeling that I could travel if I wanted to. And there's something about the fact that I can't travel even if I wanted to right now that really grates. But at the same time, I also like grandparents and parents, and I would like to continue being alive myself. And this is a scary disease. So I'm staying indoors and I'm staying away from other people because it's the responsible thing to do, because it's the smart thing to do, because it's what the science tells us we should do, and because the virus doesn't really care if you're a denier of what's actually happening, it will still get you. So I'm staying indoors. Crypto Uncle says, how do you read the situation in the world right now? There are so many different opinions out there. You know what they say about everybody having an opinion. I think it's really important to be very careful about what you read and apply critical thinking. And critical thinking is an important skill that you should have anyway. We've discovered, especially in recent times, that organizations that used to carry a lot of authority have failed dramatically in these times and have provided inaccurate, late, incomplete, or sometimes downright misleading information. This week the CDC says let's wear masks. 2 weeks ago they were saying don't wear masks, people, they don't work. So I prefer to listen to scientists. I read carefully scientific publications, journal entries, and reports from scientists. I evaluate their sources of knowledge. I look at the numbers for myself, and I make my decisions based on that. Dester asks, do you code? If yes, what languages do you know, and do you like PHP? Yes, I've been coding since I was 10 years old. It's something I love to do, but I only do it as a hobby. I don't do programming as a job because that would ruin my hobby. So when I get frustrated, when I get anxious, sometimes I code for fun so I can get my mind off things. My favorite programming language right now is Python. I can program in more than 24 languages, and I've used more than 24 languages in various forms. And picking up a new language, once you understand the basics, once you have some experience in both procedural and functional languages, picking up a new programming language is fairly easy. Being proficient in it, of course, is a whole other thing. And nowadays I don't really spend enough time to be proficient to a professional level, which is why I do this instead of coding in the Bitcoin space. All right, let's scroll down. Let me see in the chat if everybody's having fun so far and if everybody can hear me okay. All right. Yes to Crypto asks, how do you present so effectively with pretty much perfect memory and few ums and ahs? Thank you, Yes to Crypto. Your $100 will be waiting for you at the exit for giving that softball question. Actually, my presenting skills come from practice. I've been doing public speaking since I was 15 or 16 years old, and I'm doing it professionally since I was 17, and I've done it thousands of times. And with practice, it just becomes second nature. I do actually have ums and ahs in my speech. You don't notice them because they're just natural, and I don't let them get in the way. Perfect speech sounds robotic. And in terms of perfect memory, I make lots of mistakes. I have pretty good memory, but don't take everything I say 100%. Sometimes I make mistakes, and we write up the corrections in the description of the video. Alcon Daily asks, have you watched Tiger King? Do you think Carole Baskin took care of her husband? Fucking Carole Baskin, man. I don't know. You start watching that show and you're like, I think I know who the bad guys are, and I think these are the good guys. And then the second episode you're like, no, they're bad guys too. And then in the third episode you know, oh no, these people are bad guys too. It turns out there are no good people in that show. It's just a tragedy of really, really messed up people, which I think is the whole point. Anyway, it was a fun show. I did enjoy that, yeah. Okay, and now that we've covered the personal questions, the off-the-cuff, the bizarre questions, we'll go into some more specific questions about Bitcoin, open blockchains, cryptocurrencies, etc. And please do follow up in the chat if you have additional questions. This is one of the advantages of having a whole team of people. There are currently 4 people from my staff on the chat feeding me questions as I do this live Q&A. Thank you, team, for helping me out with this. And thank you to all of the supporters on Patreon and YouTube who make it possible for me to have a team. So the next questions, there's 2 questions which are relatively similar. First one is from Jim Mavrokefalos. Do you see Bitcoin going beyond the store of value as a use case in the near future? And the second one comes from Jimenez89. Am I wrong for seeing Bitcoin as a store of value? I'd like to buy stuff with Bitcoin, but I also don't want to be that guy who bought a pizza for 0.x Bitcoin and seeing the exchange rate go 100x in 10 years. All right, so I think for some people Bitcoin is a store of value, but for other people it's a medium of exchange. I use Bitcoin transactionally on a weekly basis almost. I use it to pay suppliers, contractors. I use it to pay my staff. I get paid in Bitcoin. I use it to buy services, from web hosting to DNS services to things like that. All the time. So I do use Bitcoin transaction, and one of the reasons I use Bitcoin transactionally the most is in areas where it's very difficult to use traditional currencies, primarily for cross-border transactions. So I can run a team of people that are spread out across the world, effectively a small business multinational, and use the capabilities of Bitcoin to be able to enable Testing. All right, and we're back with some minor technical problems. Turns out both of my microphone transmitters and my microphone receiver ran out of battery at the same time. If you didn't know it, one of the fun things about lithium rechargeable batteries is that they don't go full, half full, quarter full, empty. They go full, 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 full empty, and with no warning. So I ended up in that situation. I hope you can hear me okay. Let me just check in the chat room and make sure you can hear me okay. Sorry for the delay. All right, we've got some more questions. Bernard Mailman says, "Hi, Antonop. I'm new to Bitcoin. Is it okay to use a mobile Bitcoin wallet? Thanks." And James Lindsay asks, "Hi, Andreas. A lot of normies are asking me about Bitcoin lately. Do you have a wallet you recommend for new users who are not as technically inclined?" So yes, I think it's okay to use a mobile wallet. A wallet on your smartphone is actually one of the best and most secure solutions for most people out there. Your smartphone is actually a very secure operating system if you have it correctly updated. So if you keep it up to date, a smartphone will be a good basis for a wallet. Now, it's important to very carefully select the application you use as your mobile wallet. Specifically, you want to look at a couple of important things. First of all, it has to be a non-custodial wallet, which means that you retain control of your keys. The keys are not held by a third party, but instead you control the keys. And do you know why I say it's important to control your keys? It's because of this saying we have in the crypto space. And the saying, as you can see on this mug, is not your keys, not your coins. Cheers to that. Not your keys, not your coins means that one of the most important rules in crypto is that you maintain control, custody of your own currency. And so whatever mobile wallet you use on your smartphone operating system, Android or iOS or whatever, you have to make sure that you control your keys. One good way to know that is if your wallet generates a mnemonic phrase, which is 12 to 24 English words, usually 12 English words, and asks you to back that phrase up, that phrase is your keys. That phrase effectively is what all of your keys are generated from. So if you have that phrase written down somewhere safe, stored separately from your mobile wallet, you have control of your keys, your coins. Now, as to which wallet to recommend, that very much depends on what operating system you're on and which wallet is most suitable for the level of experience of the person you're trying to help. There's a number of them out there. I'm not going to do endorsements of specific mobile wallets because it changes so fast and I have to change my opinion so fast on that. But there are certainly many good quality mobile wallets out there that allow you to keep control of your own keys. Amsterdam Holland asks, can I send change to the same address where I'm sending from in the same transaction? Technically, yes, you can. However, if you do that, what that means is that the address that you sourced your transaction from, that then also received the change, will end up getting reused in a future transaction, and that is bad practice. Most wallets effectively work against that bad practice of address reuse. by constructing change addresses that are different and making sure that when you use an address to fund a transaction, it uses all of the funds in that address and returns funds to a new address, a new change address, so that you don't end up ever reusing that address. Once and done. And the reason for that has to do with privacy as well as some level of security, but primarily privacy. If you reuse addresses, it's much easier for someone to be able to statistically link the use of certain addresses with your real-life identity. Dave Fryer asks, regarding transaction fees, is their history lost as they are effectively burnt and then regenerated through the Coinbase transaction? That is a really smart point, Dave. And in fact, some developers have suggested using this as a form of privacy within the Bitcoin system, because that's exactly what happens. Fees that are paid to miners are effectively recreated in the Coinbase transaction and therefore appear to have a pristine history because they're not related to the specific transactions from which they came from. So fees break the chain of custody in Bitcoin transactions and effectively wipe the history clean, and they create pristine coins. It's one of the reasons why when the block subsidy has dropped to zero and miners are rewarded with fees as their only reward, that will also create a mechanism for introducing more privacy to those particular coins. Simon Andreas asks, what would be the point of exploring transactions on the blockchain? I'm toying with my full node, but I don't see practical usage of surfing on the blockchain. Well, I mean, manually surfing on the blockchain, the main thing it allows you to do is be able to verify that certain transactions that you expect have happened and be able to see some details as to where some money went. It's useful for troubleshooting certain automated systems and transactions, like for example, finding if a Lightning channel has closed and the UTXO has been spent or not. That's the kind of thing I most recently used the Blockchain Explorer for. If you want to do more than that, most people would use some kind of data analytics platform and do it programmatically. You're not likely to be exploring the blockchain in order to find answers to questions that you might have by clicking through from one transaction to the next or from one block to the next. You're more likely to connect that to some kind of data analytics platform and do statistical analysis on your results. It's also a great learning tool. I mean, it's one of the things that makes teaching these topics much easier, because when I do a workshop and I say, okay, this is what Alice paid Bob, and you can actually go and look at that transaction on any Block Explorer and look at the inputs and the outputs and the fees and all of the little details and validate for yourself, it gives you a much better understanding of how the transactions work. All right, Vladislav asks, hi Andreas, it's still not clear for me how one private key can generate multiple public addresses. I see in my hardware wallet and also inside mobile wallets. Thank you. Vladislav, it's not exactly how you stated it, so it's not one private key that generates multiple public addresses. It's effectively one seed that generates many private keys that each of those private keys has one public address and one Bitcoin address that correspond to it. So your wallet is not generating multiple public addresses or public keys from a single private key. It's generating multiple private keys through a process of deterministic generation, which uses, or deterministic derivation, which is defined by a Bitcoin improvement proposal called BIP32. BIP32 is a standard for hierarchical deterministic wallets that says how you can take a certain amount of entropy, which in most cases is 512 bits, use part of it as a master private key and part of it as a so-called chain code. And by mixing those together and using hashing algorithms, then derive a sequence of private keys. In a hierarchical deterministic wallet, each account or sub-account can have up to 2 billion private keys generated. And because you can have an unlimited number of sub-accounts and sub-sub-accounts and sub-sub-accounts, effectively, it's wide open. You could keep generating private keys until the end of time. So every single one of these wallets that you've used, desktop wallets, mobile wallets, hardware wallets, etc., they have a mnemonic phrase that is converted into a 512-bit seed, and that seed is used to generate a sequence of deterministically derived private keys, each of which can be used to sign for a specific Bitcoin address. So your wallet is generating new private keys for every transaction, which generates new addresses. And it's doing all of that from a single source of entropy, which is the seed, which was derived from your mnemonic phrase, the 12 to 24 English words. That entire process, which involves a lot of hashing, primarily as the main mathematical function, you can find in BIP32. The process for developing the mnemonic phrase is defined in BIP39, and those two standards work very closely together. Almost all wallets are based on those two standards, so if you want to look those up. Can I get my private key from BTCP, I'm assuming BTCP is BTC private, stored on a Ledger Nano S, and then insert it into a new Bitcoin wallet and swap the coin, or will this make the Nano Ledger S vulnerable? You can take a single key and load it on a hardware wallet and also load it on another wallet, but then some security you have, the total security you have, is that of the weakest link. If you spend or transact from one of the wallets and they all have the same keys, then that transaction will appear in all of them. It would be as if all of them did that transaction. Because wallets just contain keys. The coins are not inside the wallets. So you can take a single key and you can load it on multiple wallets, and they will see the transactions that each other are making. But of course, the level of security you have is that of the weakest wallet. So if you have a cold storage wallet, like a hardware wallet, and then you have a hot wallet, like a mobile software wallet, then your keys are stored on a hot wallet. That's the level of security you have. The fact that you also have that in cold storage doesn't make it very cold. So from that perspective, you've effectively made your key material itself vulnerable by loading it on an online system. All right, let me just quickly check into the chat, see how everybody's doing. Give me a second. I'm going to have to put on my glasses for this because I cannot read these tiny, tiny fonts. You're going to see me putting on some glasses here. Now, the CDC does not recommend any specific supplements for fighting coronavirus, but I am quite partial to vitamin B. This particular vitamin B is a hazy India Pale Ale. Cheers to all of you. All right, advice for new Bitcoiners. What advice would you give to new Bitcoiners in these times? Educate yourself before you wreck yourself. It's really important to understand all of the risks that you're facing with this complex and new technology, and so therefore I advise that people always get involved only as deep as their understanding is. So if you feel uncomfortable about buying a large amount of Bitcoin or making large transactions or investing money in this, that's because you're not yet comfortable with the technology to a level to make that investment, and you should trust that instinct. That's a good instinct. So don't get in over your head. I think this is as good a time as any to acquire education about this technology, whether or not you decide to treat it as an investment, to use it as a currency, to engage in any transactions. Even if you just do a few tiny transactions just to learn, you get the value of that education. I'm a big proponent for educating yourself in new technologies like this, so that's what I would recommend. Navina asks, hi Andreas and team. Hi team, thank you for supporting me. Great sessions as always. Could you comment on assessing a default or credit risk for an exchange? Well, I broadly put exchanges into two broad categories. Category A is exchanges that have been hacked, and Category B is exchanges that will be hacked. And from that perspective, that's how I assess the risk. Any money that is sitting in an exchange is vulnerable. I do not leave money on exchanges. If I need to trade or make a transaction or exchange, what I do is I move my money into the exchange, I exchange it, and I move my money out of the exchange. I do not leave it sitting there. And even those 15 minutes while I'm trying to process the deposit and withdrawal of my money, I'm sitting there in front of my computer with both fingers and all toes crossed going, please don't get hacked now. Please don't get hacked now. I just need 15 minutes to get my money out. So I don't trust custodial services at all, especially with digital currencies. Ironically, I would actually trust my bank holding dollars more than I would trust the average exchange holding Bitcoin, because it's harder to steal the money from the bank unless you're a banker. Whereas with an exchange, not only can the exchange owner steal it, but so can a lot of other people through hacks, because it's very difficult to secure digital currencies if you concentrate it all in one place. Did I mention not your keys, not your coins? Cheers. All right. Actually, Aaron has a follow-up question about that, which is what's the best way to earn interest on Bitcoin and still have ownership of the keys? Aaron, as far as I know, there's no mechanism to do that in Bitcoin. I know that in some other blockchains, there are capabilities to use smart contracts to do the kind of collateralized loan that allows you to earn interest while holding your crypto inside a smart contract, where you still have control of the funds because you control that smart contract, but you're exposed to the risk of that smart contract having bugs. But the bottom line is you don't earn interest on Bitcoin by having ownership of the keys. Really it's very, 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 very risky to lend Bitcoin to someone for a variety of reasons. So I'd be very careful about that. Kryptonite says, Andreas, do you believe the CoinShares report that 74% of the energy mining Bitcoin is renewable energy? It's hard to believe knowing that China only has 38% for renewable energy. It's not hard to believe for that reason. It's not hard to believe for that reason because the 38% of China's renewable energy is an average across an entire enormous country with more than 1 billion people and 100 cities that have more than 10 million people that none of us can pronounce. China is an enormous country. Most people don't realize how many mega metropolises there are in China and how big a country it is. So 38% of that enormous country is renewable. The economics of mining Bitcoin make it so that renewable energy is far preferred, not because renewable energy is cheaper, but primarily because renewable energy is often produced at locations where there isn't local demand, and therefore the renewable energy has to be transported through high voltage cables or other mechanisms to other locations in order to serve the populations in need. Hydroelectric dams, wind farms, solar farms, etc. are generally in wide open remote spaces, whereas the demand of the energy is in big cities. So it's not surprising to me that the economics of Bitcoin would make it such that putting a mining operation near an underutilized hydroelectric plant or an underutilized solar farm or underutilized wind farm energy plant would make a lot of sense. So the idea that the percentage of average renewable energy in Bitcoin is twice that as the average in the country is not unbelievable. However, I don't know how they've collected this data. So I could have many other reasons not to believe that report because I have no idea how they collected that data and I haven't really analyzed it to form my own opinion, but certainly the fact that it's twice the average for the entire country of China doesn't surprise me. The economics certainly justify that. Next question is about India. What do you think about India's recent Supreme Court decision to remove the crypto ban in India? So let me first clarify that from what I understand, this, first of all, India did not have a crypto ban. India had a ruling by the Central Bank of India, RBI, that applied a ruling to all of the member banks that it regulates, saying that they could not service exchange operators, and therefore exchange operators had no basis to have bank accounts in order to allow withdrawals and conversions to rupees. So what they did is they didn't ban crypto, they banned exchanges from holding bank accounts, which made it impossible to have an exchange in India. Bitcoin didn't go anywhere. Crypto didn't go anywhere. It was still operating in India. I know plenty of people in India who use cryptocurrency. And they continue to use cryptocurrency. They continue to trade. They just used informal markets and over-the-counter operations, cash and things like that. And they also used a lot of overseas exchanges. Many of the people who have the ability to trade Bitcoin in India also have the ability to open bank accounts in other countries, which they do because the banking system in India is very controlling. So what happened here is that when the RBI issued the ruling to ban exchanges from having bank accounts, the exchanges sued. And that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that that ban was unreasonable and vacated that order, making it possible for all of the exchanges to reopen operations. Banning crypto is something that you can write into law very easily, but you can't actually enforce. Lots of countries will and have banned Bitcoin, and that doesn't mean that Bitcoin is no longer available in their country. Or as I like to say it, you can take your country out of Bitcoin, but you can't take Bitcoin out of your country. Richard asks, actually we have a whole bunch of layer 2 solutions, so I'm going to, before I go into lightning and layer 2 questions, I'm going to go back into the chat. By the way, did you know that we have a lightning emoji? It's a little yellow heart with a lightning bolt in it. So if you're a YouTube member, you can actually use that in the chat. Let's see if anybody's using it right now. There we go. Fantastic. It seems like everybody's having fun. I think I need a bit more vitamin B. Cheers, everyone. All right, Richard asks, I'd like to send some Satoshis as a gift via the Lightning Network without the recipient first having to issue an invoice. Is that possible? Richard, it kind of is possible, but using only some workarounds. There's a couple of ways you can do it that allow you to do it without the recipient having to issue an invoice. It's a capability that's being introduced into the standard now, and some clients implement it. However, the easiest way, honestly, to do this is to open a channel with the recipient directly and just do a push. So when you open a channel, you can also select to do a push. Most nodes accept pushes. My node doesn't, and the reason it doesn't is because a lot of people did it by accident and then I had to send them back their money. But most nodes by default accept pushed transactions, which means that you start a channel, but then you immediately move some of the balance to their side as part of the funding transactions, which effectively means that they now have those funds on their end of the channel, which means you effectively tipped them as a gift without receiving an invoice, so you could do that. Dow Adaptive asks, when will Mastering the Lightning Network be released? You know, I used to make plans and project plans and trying to figure out what I'd be doing next in my life, and the universe decided to laugh in my face by launching a global pandemic. So at this point, I'm not making plans anymore. The original planned date for release was December of 2020. I don't think we're going to make that deadline anymore. I would like to, but I don't think it's possible. In the meantime, Mastering the Lightning Network is an open source book. You can actually watch it being written as we do so, and I can tell you honestly, we haven't done any work in the last 3 weeks because of all of the upheaval. You can watch it on github.com/lnbook/lnbook. And watch it as it's being written, maybe even contribute some yourself. Fred asks, do you think a second layer solution will make it possible to transact in Bitcoin with complete privacy in the future? Will that replace privacy coins eventually? Fred, honestly, no, I don't think that's the case. And the reason I don't think that's the case is because privacy is a competition between attackers and defenders. We're trying to increase privacy for ourselves, but some people are trying to violate our privacy actively. So this is a moving target. There is no point at which you achieve perfect privacy. And privacy is not something that you achieve by doing one thing. It's actually a layered approach that involves applying many different privacy policies and capabilities in different aspects of your life and your technology engagement. So privacy can mean things like VPNs. Privacy can mean things like securing your computer properly. Privacy can mean things like using the onion router. And it can also mean things like stealth addresses and coin joins and zero-knowledge protocols and all of that. So there's no magic solution that achieves 100% privacy. Lightning will enable more private transactions than the transactions you can make on-chain on the Bitcoin blockchain. But it's not panacea, and it's not the end of the road. So we will keep working, and we need to keep working on privacy. And privacy coins adopt many different approaches that are not necessarily easy to apply within Bitcoin or even within the Lightning second layer. So I doubt they're going away as a solution either. Wow, we have 250 people watching the Q&A. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. Third layer technology. Brian asks, are there any talks of a third layer, level 3 or layer 3 of Bitcoin being implemented or theorized, where Bitcoin transactions on chain are level 1 or layer 1? Lightning in is layer 2, and layer 3 is yes. We are definitely having these discussions. There's a couple of concepts that people are calling layer 3, but if you think about it, if we had a layer 2 network like Lightning, and there was another layer 2 network, perhaps not even on Bitcoin, maybe either Plasma or Raiden or one of the other layer 2 networks on Ethereum or somewhere else. And you wanted to connect Lightning with this other layer 2 network, and you needed a protocol for the gateways that connect the two layer 2 networks. What would you call that protocol? I'd call that a layer 3 protocol. So if you think of layer 2 protocols similar to how local area networks work on the internet, and IP is the protocol that bridges them together, then I do think we might see the emergence of layer 3 and beyond protocols within the blockchain space for sure. And I think those are most likely going to be multi-currency protocols. All right. So we'll go to the last question. Actually, we have one more question on the topic of Lightning, which is why would anyone run a Lightning network since the transactions are very cheap? The answer is twofold. One is ideological. People run the Lightning network because they want to see this technology succeed and they don't care about the financial motivation of this. And the second is that they need to use the Lightning network in order to offer retail services or other services on top. For example, I run a Lightning node because I have a shop which is shut down now because of coronavirus, but otherwise wasn't, where you could buy, you know, this mug with a Lightning payment. So why was I running a Lightning node? Because I needed it to run my shop, and also because I'm interested in the technology and running this experiment. There's all kinds of reasons that people might run Lightning nodes that have nothing to do with the incentives. And then again, of course, individual transactions are cheap on the Lightning network, but that doesn't mean that you can't aggregate thousands and thousands or even hundreds of thousands of transactions and make a reasonable amount of money. At the moment, it's not break even, so we'll see. We have another follow-up question from the last chat. Pure Thoughts asks, are paper wallets considered safe? And the answer is no. Now, every time I give that answer, people go, but what about no? Just no. No. I don't say this because I dislike paper wallets. I've used paper wallets. In fact, I had a company that made paper wallet kits and sold them in 2013 called the Safe Paper Wallet. And paper wallets were great at the time. Since then, the technology has advanced. We now have BIP39 mnemonic phrases and BIP32 hierarchical deterministic wallets that give us all of the security capabilities of paper wallets, including the ability to back it up on a permanent medium such as paper or steel, with several big advantages, including multiple accounts, multiple cryptocurrencies, no address reuse, etc. And those mnemonic phrases can be loaded onto a broad variety of hardware wallet devices or even software wallet devices and spent without weird side effects. Paper wallets have a lot of problems, and the biggest problems they have is if you try to implement paper wallets today by yourself, what you're doing is you're building a DIY hardware wallet, and most people don't have the expertise to do that correctly. So you end up building an insecure hardware wallet using insecure software and with insufficient backups. So people lose money all the time because of applying too complex technology that exceeds their level of knowledge of understanding. And in security, that's a deadly mistake. So even though I love paper wallets and I used paper wallets in the past, that was the past. We have better technology now. Paper wallets are obsolete. There's no reason to use a paper wallet when you can use a mnemonic phrase instead. You can generate those offline. You can even do it with simple things like dice or playing cards. You don't have to trust anything more than you do with a paper wallet, and you can achieve much better results. Yes to Crypto says, given how hard it is for a newbie to use Bitcoin currently and how custodial services are the only thing they're used to, what can the crypto savvy do today that can help the situation? I like to use a metaphor that Stephanie Murphy introduced, which is the staircase of financial sovereignty. And she describes it as each step on the staircase getting you to more financial sovereignty. Step one is getting into crypto. And no matter how you get into crypto, for what reason you get into crypto, you've already taken one important step outside of the constraints of the monopolistic fiat system and into this new technology. Now, even if at that moment you buy crypto on an exchange and even store it on an exchange in a custodial system, you've still taken a positive step away from fiat. So that's step one. Now, that's not the best way to store your crypto. So as crypto experts, as crypto savvy people, what we need to do is gradually help educate our friends and family on how to take step two, which is secure custodial control of their own money, meaning taking control of their keys, installing a hardware wallet, using a hardware wallet, backing it up correctly, and knowing how to use it securely instead of a custodial service like a third-party custodial service like an exchange. So then we help them get up one step on that staircase. We may be several steps above. We may be running our own node and running our own Electrum personal server and doing coin joins and participating in e-commerce with crypto, with BTCP server. No matter what you're doing, there are many stops that give you more sovereignty, more independence in this financial system. And it's important not to criticize the people who have taken one small step but are not there yet. Instead, congratulate them for the small step they've taken away from the fiat system. That's a huge achievement already. It's a huge break from the past. And help teach them how they can take more control over their crypto and learn how to use things like hardware wallets. So thank you all. There's a couple of follow-ups to paper wallets because, as always, when I say don't use paper wallets, they're not secure, everybody jumps in and goes, but what about? No. If you're not sure why I'm saying that paper wallets are not the securest solution, do not try the what about. Not because I'm the expert or the authority, but because I've studied this topic and I used to run a paper wallet kit company. So I do know this topic quite well. What about paper wallets created on an offline computer? You're rebuilding a hardware wallet from scratch with less secure hardware, less secure software, and less technical expertise than the people who build hardware wallets. So if you think you have the technical expertise to build a hardware wallet from scratch and make it better, cheaper, and more secure than the people who build hardware wallets for a living, great, good for you. 99.99% of users do not know how to do that securely and will get themselves into very, very serious trouble. Beyond that, paper wallets are still not a good solution, even if you can build them on an offline computer and make them, the way you think, is as secure as a hardware wallet. You're still going to have problems with address reuse, with change addresses, with resilience, with all kinds of other things. So no, don't use paper wallets on an offline computer. Instead, buy a hardware wallet and build a mnemonic phrase. Stacking Sacks asks, what about OpenDime? OpenDime isn't really a paper wallet. It's more of a single-purpose hardware wallet. I'm a big fan of OpenDime devices. I use them myself. I think they're great. But they've already done all of the work for you, so you don't need to worry about the details. I would still use OpenDimes, and they do have a good purpose, but that's not a paper wallet. Arndt Brugman says, hardware wallets have flaws too, right? Yes, they do. And yet, they're still more secure than anything you would build yourself. Unless you are a security expert who can not only understand somebody else explaining that hardware wallet vulnerability, but can probably replicate it themselves and test it themselves, then the best option you have is to use a hardware wallet according to the instructions of the manufacturer. Almost all of the flaws that have been found in hardware wallets have to do with specific attack scenarios where someone has physical access to your hardware wallet, you do not have a passphrase set, and they're able to introduce some kind of electronic device and inspect your hardware wallet. None of these flaws really apply to the general use of hardware wallets. Just because you see something at an academic conference on security doesn't mean you should stop using hardware wallets. For the vast majority of users, hardware wallets are by far the most secure, resilient, easy to back up, and easy to use solution for long-term storage of cryptocurrency, full stop, period. Don't use paper wallets. And with that, let's wrap it up. We've been going for a long time today. I can't thank you enough for joining both my Bitcoin Basics workshop, which is now available as a regular video. You can watch it as many times as you want, and this live stream Q&A session where we answered lots of different questions about Bitcoin and coronavirus and the Lightning Network. And I think the best advice I gave today was vitamin B. Cheers. So I know I wasn't able to answer all of your questions. I still got like 3 pages of questions here from my team. If you like these types of live stream Q&A sessions, this is one of the main perks I give to my Patreon subscribers who make it possible for me to do this global education mission without having to shill corporations, sell products, or run around chasing deals. Instead, I can do what I want to do, which is focus on neutral education about Bitcoin and open blockchains, and actually get funded by my own community who enjoy access to my work. All my work is available for free and under open license, and in order to do that, I need your support. So when people subscribe on Patreon, they give me a steady, regular income that I can use to pay my team, basically, so that it can extend my reach and I can do more work and not worry about all of the little details that have to be done in running a company on a global basis. So thank you so much. If you want to ask questions like this, you can be a subscriber on Patreon. That's one of the main perks. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit like, smash the like, and turn on the notifications so you can see when I do my next video. YouTube does announce the live streams and public videos like that, and I'm doing another live stream next Saturday, so see you then. Stay safe, stay inside, stay the fuck at home, put on a mask, be kind to those around you, and I hope you're all doing well with this strange environment we're in. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.